Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes in 1972. This film is directed by j.lee Thompson and it's basically, yes, the fourth, of course, film in the franchise and, of course, yes, the penultimate of the original, the original sequels. And yeah, basically this one I had never seen before and, of course, I wasn't looking forward to it, as I said in my last review, I believe. These last two ones, this and Battle for the Planet of the Apes, they're not, loved at all, really. They're quite panned at times, certainly critically, and fans, would put this, most rankings, you'd see this, not one of the popular ones for sure. And basically, yeah, this, Beneath, and Battle are all, just in some ways, not really liked that much, compared, to the rest of the films. And of course, the Tim Burton one is a completely different ballpoint. That is completely separate, and that is just, yes, for good reasons, that is completely, hated. Now, this one, never seen it before, of course. So this was the first watch, and yeah, basically, I didn't really know what to expect. I thought, I read a bit of the plot synopsis. Of course, this is set in 1991, so it's almost 2 decades after the, of course, the last film in the franchise. Escape. Now, what happened at the end of that? I'm not gonna get into, they kind of spoil it to that territory there. But basically, this follows on from that. Of course, Caesar, of course, Cornelius and Zero gave birth, and basically, the film follows Caesar when he's older, and the guy that was with him. All I'll say, the guy that was with him at the end of the last film in the French, the previous entry. He's in it a bit, the beginning of this film, and he's basically the one that's been looking after, Caesar. For that time, and basically he's in the film, and in this time, within the timeline, the apes are treated like slaves, basically. And this film really, it kind of chronicles the rise, of them. You could say it's very, very similar to Rise of the Planet of the Apes in that sense. Now, of course, and you can fit most of the films together, but really, of course, Rise didn't really go. It kind of it was a reboot, just really concerned with the original Planet of the Apes, and that's fair enough. But it did, of course, add a lot of holes and kind of things, that continuity, because this is basically, in some regards, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. This film, some of the events that happen, are very, very similar. So it kind of it meshes a lot. I suppose after Escape, things were completely different in terms of, continuing with the Rise of the Planet of the Apes and the new trilogy, and basically, because of course in Escape from the Planet of the Apes, the apes went, to LA, and basically everyone knew that they could talk. And of course in Rise, they first talk, many, many years ahead, within the timeline, so it kind of is different. And but I'm going to be judging this, as a film overall, and what I felt for it, did I care for it, and did it, was it well put together and everything. And basically, this film, I think is very, very bizarre. I think it is in places boring, and at times poorly made. But actually, the second half of the film was leaps and bounds ahead of it, the rest of it, and the final act of the film, I would say, continuously 20 minutes, in succession, was actually very good. And I think it's very bizarre for a film, to start off this week, really, and then really, really build, and the final 20 minutes or 25 minutes is like it's made by some completely different director, with a different approach completely, and there was actually really good dialogue. There was some really good action scenes, and just actually very, very rousing climax to the film, and it came together really well. It was actually well shot in these parts. It's bizarre, because this film, of course, it's got two different, I believe, two different cuts now. This was, it must have been, and of course, this is just on the DVD set. I'm guessing it was the original theatrical cut, and of course that one is one that's got a lot of violence cut out of it, I believe. So, I didn't really look into it too much, and then I've realised, afterwards, this is the case. But this doesn't come with the director's cut, I don't believe. So, in the director's cut, I think more is added in, and there's more, less. There's more violence, and that was cut out a little bit of the theatrical one. But already, the theatrical one is quite violent, actually, and quite shocking. Of course, a lot of these sequels to the Planet of the Apes films, they are quite violent and quite quite brutal, disturbing. But yes, basically, I think the opening sort of act to this film just didn't really, I was liking it in different moments, but overall, I just didn't. I didn't really care for it that much. I thought it was pretty weak. I think it was on the level of, what I thought in the end of Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Probably a bit worse in some areas. Definitely I would say the framing a lot of the time early on is shocking. It just the whole as well the shot flow of this film is off. It's really off. So much shot, so at times that I cannot actually make out. A lot of this film. It just seems people's faces are halfway off the screen, and you've got just some very really confusing things, and the way that it's been edited together. Just the way that, the kind of as well, it's got quite a dull look to the film. I think this is much better when it's at night time, this film, the way it looks. And yeah, it's just the way that it was put together and the kind of scenes that were shown, just the whole shot flow. It was confusing, it was disorientating, and it did, make me lose kind of just, I lost kind of interest through the visuals alone, because it was very, very flat, and just not well made, in that sense. But Caesar in this film, how is he? Is he a good character? Yes, and certainly towards the end, very, very good. I think Roddy McDowall, in the end, gives an amazing performance at times. Really does. And of course, this one, it kind of no one knows that who he is at first. Kind of they're looking for Caesar basically. Because they somehow in a really, really poorly done scene, actually, one that is quite far fetched, and that is from, as I've said before on my channel, plot points and everything, plot holes and stuff, don't really concern me whatsoever. But when it's this unbelievable, the way they guessed, there's a scene you'll probably know when you watch it. There's a scene where they guess basically the whole plot, the twist of it, kind of thing, and how things, went about and stuff. Very, very bizarre how they just suddenly guess this and they guess it right. Just it's so stupid. And then basically they're looking for the Caesar guy, of course, character, and yeah, basically they're trying to. There's this kind of community and these kind of locations where they're all kind of kept as slaves, these apes, and yeah, basically Caesar is the only one who can talk, and there's of course characters throughout the film that kind of help him in a way. There's this subplot with this character. I'm not sure of his name, but he was good in the film. I thought actually. There was basically there's moments throughout that I was kind of interested in and kind of liking, but overall the first half of the film, it wasn't good. It was weak overall. The visuals were not good, and the performance of Roddy McDowall throughout is good. But once he speaks, that's really when it kind of kicks in, and it really does elevate actually the end in certain ways. But yes, basically you've got flourishes of good stuff, decent stuff, but overall it was weak. Then things start to happen in terms of the narrative, and basically, it does become compelling. There is some outbursts of violence in the film, which only kind of adds to the bizarre nature of it. But because at times this is quite off-putting. But in the second half of the film, it really is warranted. Basically, the violence and the kind of the different things that happen in the film. But yes, once the second half comes about, things actually start happening. There is a progression to it, much more compelling. As I said, the cinematography and everything seems to improve in the scenes where, it's at night time basically, and just there's actually the battles that are going on, and kind of there's some really really well put together action in the second half. The final act in particular, when they kind of it's basically apes versus humans in certain bits of the film, and that is all really good. I think actually surprisingly, and the rest of the film, it felt cheap. It felt kind of underwhelming in terms of that. It didn't feel like a confident film. But then this comes away, this comes along, and kind of really really good action at times. I think the different sequences, they have a flow to them, they have a progression, and it's quite epic actually to see. And then in the end, very very satisfying, and it kind of actually some really good dialogue. It's like they were saving the actual decent stuff for the ending parts. As well, there's a really good speech, very rousing speech, and it really puts things into perspective, and it kind of very very satisfying, and kind of just really entertaining. Now I think the villains in the film, you could say they're not that good, very very campy, not great acting, and just a bit kind of one note. And basically, once Roddy McDowall really comes into his own, he's allowed to speak in the film. That is really when it's at its best. And I think actually I did in the end like this film. I think the direction, it's a mixed bag, but it's pretty all over the place at times at the beginning. But then it really did actually kind of impress me at times. And it's, if the first act, the first half of the film was as good as the second half, this would have been a good film, actually, and maybe a bit more. But as it stands, it's an average one because the first I was at a couple of places where I was actually quite bored. It was a bit repetitive. I didn't really have much going on in terms of the narrative, the progression, the characters. There was a couple that cropped up that were quite good, but others not so much. But then slowly things start to happen. With these subplots and progression. And a kind of arc to it all, and then when it ends, actually a really really effective way. I think overall I do like the film. It's a low average because it has got a lot of flaws, especially in the first half. These sequels, apart from Escape, and really aren't worthy sequels. But this one, at least it's not bad. I think it's definitely better than Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Not as good as Escape, because that was a really good film that I almost loved, you could say. Really like that one, but I really like what they've done with Caesar in this film. It was got a couple of inspirational moments at the end. Actually, really really good. And the first half, as I say, was weak, definitely, and had some really shocking moments. The way that the camera movements and everything were just so. Some of the framing in this film is laughable. The zooms as well, you just think, wow, that is just so pointless, and it's just not good. It's a lot of unmotivated zooms, camera movements, but not done in a good way for me, and just it had a real kind of directionless feel at times. A couple of places, actually, the lows of the film, the editing weren't up to scratch. But then I could say the very good final act, and overall, the definitely a second half that I did like, and it's just under 90 minutes, the version I saw, and really, if I judge it as a whole, I can't say I dislike it, because I did like it overall, and I'd have to give it a 62%. I think that's a fair score, because it could have definitely been in the sevens. It could have been nearing that 8 mark. If it was all as good as the final act, especially, that was really good. None of it really, was great in terms of the acts in the film, but it was very good at its best. So yeah, a decent sequel, an average film. It did raise some questions as well. Very mixed bag film, but overall, I have to say I did kind of like it. Just nothing really too special overall, and it has some real flaws. But yes, I suppose the timeline, by this point is, if you connect this and the new trilogy, it's a bit off, you could say. But yeah, it's still interesting with all the lore and the kind of the way you have different alternate timelines, you could say. Like a lot of things happens a lot, especially in video games. But yeah, basically, I suppose it's how you interpret it. But yes, basically, a lot of things don't add up, over the entire franchise, but that's to be expected. And basically, I don't look forward to Battle, but who knows? It might be, it might not be the worst. And the only one that it could, it's got to, the worst, the one that I've seen so far. Then, if it's excluding Battle, is of course the Tim Burton one, and it would really be, it'd be a especially bad film if it manages to be worse than that one. So, who knows? But yeah, I look forward to reviewing that in a way and seeing what it's like. But yeah. Thanks for watching my review, and I'll be watching watching the rest of the franchise, of course, within the next few weeks, definitely, and reviewing them all. But yes, thanks for watching.